Almost kings never crowned. Why narcissists collapse at the edge of success. There's a strange pattern you start to notice if you've watched enough narcissists sprint through life like they're auditioning for a biopic about themselves. They get close, close to the promotion, close to the marriage, close to the dream deal, close to the applause that they've rehearsed accepting since childhood. And then, right as their fingers curl around it, the whole thing slides through their grip like sand. From the outside, it looks like bad luck, a betrayal, a misunderstanding, haters, jealousy, people who can't handle greatness. But if you look closely, it's not sabotage from the world, it's erosion from within. The illusion of ascent. Narcissists often climb quickly. They are charming when they need to be, magnetic, strategic. They know how to mirror people's desires, how to present confidence as competence, and how to weaponize ambition. For a while, this works. They build networks. They win over partners. They land opportunities. But here's the problem. They built their ladder out of borrowed rungs. They take credit instead of earning it. They extract devotion instead of cultivating it. And they demand loyalty instead of inspiring it. And anything built on extraction has a shelf life. The hidden cost of taking. You cannot go through life humiliating people, exploiting kindness, manipulating affection, and expect the universe to keep investing in you. Call it karma. Call it social consequence. Call it psychology. The name doesn't matter. When someone consistently takes from others, they are not just harming those people. They are quietly dismantling their own foundation. Because real prosperity requires trust, emotional depth, collaboration, accountability, and the ability to repair damage. Narcissists struggle with every single one of these. They see love as leverage, kindness as weakness, and forgiveness as a loophole. And when you treat every relationship like a transaction, eventually people stop trading with you. Why they never raised to the potential. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most narcissists did not start out as villains. They started as children. Children who were overpraised and never corrected, or harshly criticized and never comforted, made into golden trophies or forced into survival roles far too young. Some were the golden child who could do no wrong. Some were the scapegoat who survived by becoming bigger than their pain. And some were parentified, learning early that control equals safety. And what they were rarely taught was how to sit with shame without collapsing, how to fall without rewriting reality, how to love without controlling, and how to receive love without distrusting it. So instead of developing real resilience, they developed performance. And instead of developing empathy, they developed an image. And instead of developing depth, they developed defense. They were never raised to their potential because potential requires vulnerability, and vulnerability was never safe. The self-sabotage cycle. This is where the collapse begins. When the narcissist gets real close to success, something terrifying appears: exposure. Real success requires transparency. Real intimacy requires reciprocity. And real leadership requires humility. And humility feels like annihilation to someone whose identity is bent on superiority. So they pick fights right before big breakthroughs. They cheat right before commitment. They alienate allies right before expansion. Or they overplay their hand when patience was required. It looks like external chaos, but it's really internal panic. Because succeeding would mean, being seen. And being seen risks discovering that they're not invincible. So unconsciously, they burn it down first. If it collapses because of them, they still feel in control. Energy consequence and the boomerang effect. Now, there's also something deeply human at work here. When you consistently humiliate others, you create enemies. When you exploit kindness, you dry up goodwill. And when you take love for granted, you lose your safest ally. People remember how you made them feel. And when the narcissist needs support the most, those bridges are ash. You can't humiliate your team and expect loyalty under pressure. You can't mock your partner and expect devotion when you fall. And you can't drain every relationship and expect a rescue party. Energy returns, not mystically, practically. The very traits that help them rise becomes the reasons that they fall. The tragedy of the most haunting part of this is, they are often very talented, intelligent, capable, visionary, with gifts. And they really could have had it all. But thriving requires integration. And it requires facing wounds instead of projecting them. It requires accountability instead of blame. And without that inner work, every summit becomes a cliff. And they stand on the edge of success, the wind in their hair, crown within reach. And then their own unresolved shame, entitlement, and fear shove them backwards. Not because the world cursed them, but because they never learned how not to curse themselves. When love was given and taken, and there is something especially destructive about taking from someone who tried to love you. Love is stabilizing, it's grounding, and it's corrective. When someone offers genuine care, they're offering you a chance to grow. And if you exploit that instead, you don't just lose a person, you lose your greatest opportunity for healing. And the universe does not reward the destruction of grace, not out of revenge, but out of consequence. And the reason why I titled this piece, Almost Kings Never Crowned, is because in the end, narcissists often live in a state of near success. They tell stories about what almost happened. They blame what almost worked. And they describe how close they were. But close is not crowned. And without humility, empathy, and accountability, almost is the highest altitude that they can survive. The tragedy is not that they never had potential. The tragedy is that they could not tolerate becoming the person that's required to sustain it. And so they circle the summit again and again, collapsing at the edge, wondering why the world keeps slipping from their grasp, when the answer has always been in their own hands.